So Ephesians chapter 5, verse number 33 says, "Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband." So again, I know we've read this verse over and over, and it kind of seems like, all right, we just hit the verse and then we get in. But if you think about what the verse is saying, these are commands, right? And we, as Christians, we believe God says what he means and says things on purpose for a reason, and we are supposed to follow and obey. And the husband is supposed to love his wife. That's what she needs. It's a command to the husbands to love our wives. And wives, it's a command to you to reverence your husband. And again, this goes back to whether she respects you or not, men, you're supposed to love. Whether he loves you, wives, the way you need to be loved, you're supposed to respect. It's not a I will if they will, it's a I will because I'm told to, because God commands us to do that. So as you look at your marriage and you live your daily lives, how you treat each other needs to be filtered through this verse. Are you giving the love that she needs? Or are you giving the respect that he also needs? And that's how we should look at our marriage and how we should filter everything through. So as we go through all these acronyms and all these points that are good, and hopefully we're doing them, but there's always room for improvement, as we go through these things and learn about them and relearn about them. Hopefully it helps us to look at ourselves and kind of see where we stand, not where she stands or where he stands, but where you stand in regards to your relationship, how you're doing what we're talking about. So the first few weeks, obviously, we're going to go through the men and what they're supposed to do. Last week we talked about closeness and being close. She wants to be close. She wants to be there. When she's pushing and trying to get too close to you, you can maybe feel like she's getting up in your business, right? And then she's trying to control you and prying a little bit. And that's what it feels like as a man sometimes, is that's what your wife is trying to do. But we need to realize and kind of decipher the code that she's speaking in, is that she needs your love. And she's crying out for love as she's getting close, and not feel that she's trying to control you, but that she wants to be with you. She wants to talk to you. She wants to be close to you. So as you'll see, openness is very, very similar to closeness. And that says something if we're going to talk about two things very similar, how important it is for women to feel close and open with their husband, and for their husband to be open with them. So that's one thing as men we can struggle with, being open, being transparent. We like to keep things to ourselves, even when we're upset or get upset at things or have issues in our marriage. A lot of times we can, and what we'll call it is, and it's very, everyone knows this, men are good at compartmentalizing things. We can put things off and we can shove things in a closet and shut the door, and it's there and we know it's there, but it'll be fine over there. So men are really good at compartmentalizing things, where women are more expressive responsive, meaning they want to talk things out. They want to have issues out in the open to resolve them. And we talked about this a little bit last week. But when we talk about openness, that's the difference here. Women want things to be out there, and especially in your relationship. And that's what we're keying in on. We're not talking necessarily about every other aspect of life. But for the marriage relationship and how the relationship is going, wives, for the most part, want it to be open, want things to be out. They want to discuss them. They want to resolve them so they can move and be close again. They want to resolve it. They don't want distance, and they don't want things that are not shared. They want everything to be shared. Now, in every situation, and kind of pausing here for a minute, obviously, husbands also need love, and wives also need respect. It's not one or the other. It's just the most needed thing. And not every relationship, and not every husband-wife relationship is exactly this way too. There may be some relationships where the wives are more closed off than the husbands are. That's a possibility. It's not saying this is ever the way it is all the time. But in the experience of the guy that wrote this book, who's done marriage counseling and seminars for like decades, this is the majority of cases. So, if it isn't the case in your relationship, I understand. That's definitely possible. But try to take something and learn about your spouse from this situation, or from these lessons, and maybe about yourself too. So, all right, so we have expressive responsive for the wives. They want to talk about everything, and compartmentalize for the husbands. They put issues that we don't want to deal with into compartments. And we could be upset about something, right? Something could be bothering us, but if you looked, everything looks fine. And the way we act, the way we talk, everything's fine. It's like you see, and I know I'm way too old to be referencing memes, but the dog holding a cup of coffee while the firehouse, the coffee shop's just burning. He's like, everything's fine. He's just sitting there in a coffee shop holding a coffee cup and the whole place is on fire. And he says, everything's fine. That could be us as men sometimes. The inside, we could just be fired up. We could be mad. We could be depressed. We could be sad. We could be whatever. But everything's fine. And we act that way. And when we act that way, that's a good survival instinct, especially for work and for just being a man and taking care of things. But when it comes to your relationship with your wife, you can't bottle things up and be like, everything's fine, not talk about it. You got to get it out. Wives need you to be open. So I'll give you an analogy here. It's kind of like a string of Christmas lights, right? So if you're a man, maybe you don't. I know. I love putting up Christmas lights. Like, I'm ready to go now. And Lisa's like, no, you can't put Christmas lights up yet. I'm like, but it's warm out still. I don't want to do it when it's cold. But nevertheless, we'll get, and it'll be cold. I'll be wearing gloves and freezing. But I love putting up Christmas lights, right? I love the ambience of lights. I like lights in the house. Like, I put Christmas lights up in rooms and stuff. I just like that soft glow of lights. I think it's cool. Accent lights, things like that. So I really like Christmas lights. Well, there's a couple different kinds of Christmas lights. You get a string of Christmas lights where if one light goes out, the whole string goes out, right? And we're going to say the wives are that way, right? They're a string of Christmas lights that if one light goes out, you smash one light, they all go out. There's also a string of Christmas lights where you could lose 10 lights on the string and the rest of them would stay going. And that's husbands, right? We can crush 10 different lights, but the rest of our lights will still be going on. And that's kind of how husbands are and wives are. Wives are, one light goes out, there's a problem in the relationship, everything stops. No, it doesn't. But to her, the relationship, okay, we got to fix this. We can't just pretend like nothing's happened. We've got to resolve this situation. And it could be small, it could be serious marital situation, but there's a conflict in the marriage. It's affecting her whole being throughout the day. So if you get into an argument in the morning or you have a conflict in the morning, and just for this instance, the husband has to go to work and it isn't resolved by the time he goes to work, most of the time that'll bother the wife the whole day. Now, she'll live her life. She'll do the things. It's not like she'll sit in the corner and cry the whole time. Probably. I mean, that may happen sometimes, once in a while. But for the most part, she still continues with work, what she's got to do, work, kids, school, whatever the case may be. But the minute he comes home, she's ready again to talk about it. Okay, you were gone for 8 hours. You're back. Let's take care of this. Let's handle this. No more time to go by. That's the wife. One light goes out, it bothers her. All the lights go out. The husband, in the same argument, his light went out. They had an argument. It upset him. His light goes out. He goes to work, and within 5 minutes, he's not even thinking about it anymore. It has left his mind. While the wife is at home doing school with the kids, or she went to work, and it still is in her mind. She's still thinking about it. She's still replaying that conversation in her mind. Well, he said that. I can't believe he said that. What did he mean when he said that? Why would he say? And you're replaying the whole conversation. Probably before the husband even got to work. He drove out the driveway and he's thinking about what he's got to do at work. And he's already moved on past that conversation because you can smash a few of his lights in a string of lights and the rest of them still go. The rest of them still go on. So he's able to put those feelings away. He's able to, without dealing with them even, he's able to compartmentalize them, go on to work and continue as normal. He'll come home. So after 8 hours, he comes home. You're ready as the wife to, all right, let's discuss this. Let's handle this. He comes home and you're like, all right, let's talk about it. And he's like, wait, what? You're like, we had this discussion. He's like, what was it about again? Oh, right. And you have to remind him what the argument was because he has forgotten. And because he's compartmentalized it. He has moved on. And he's surprised you're still upset about it when he comes home. He thought you were good because 8 hours have gone by and you haven't talked about it, so he's fine. And he hasn't talked about it, so it's kind of drifted away. And to you, you're surprised as the wife that I can't believe he's forgotten about it, and he's surprised that I'm still upset. Of course I'm upset. We didn't resolve the situation. It needs to be resolved. And he has compartmentalized it. So now that husbands, you know that about your wife, right? And you, as a husband, you get home, you're annoyed. Like, why are you still bothered by this? It's gone. Maybe you didn't handle it, but in your eyes, in your heart, it's fine. It's over with. I've forgotten about it. I've moved on. But she has not. Now, as a husband, now that you know this, right, and you knew this already, but now that I've said it out loud, and now you do know this, you have an advantage in how to handle that situation, to know that's what your wife needs. And the reason that she is that way is because she needs that closeness with you. She wants that closeness. She desires that closeness. That's something that she needs, your love. And when you act as if it doesn't matter anymore, or you've compartmentalized it so much that it's just you've forgotten about it, to her, that can come across as unloving. That you don't care enough about her and how she feels, that you've just completely forgotten about the whole situation. So that must mean you just don't care about how she feels. And she may not even be able to verbalize it that way, but that could be what's going through her mind. And so she needs, now that you know this, she needs you to be open, to not compartmentalize, to be out there, to talk to her about it, to be ready to share and share your emotions. Man, we have to share our emotions. That's hard to do sometimes because sometimes you just don't want to talk about it. Right? Sometimes you just don't want to share your emotions. But your wife, the person that you're supposed to be the most close to on this earth, the person that the relationship is the closest you have with anybody else, your mom, your sister, your brother, your dad, your best friend, your spouse is the relationship you are the closest with. Remember, cleave, like you're face to face, two become one. So your wife needs that closeness. She needs you to be open. Okay, when you were dating, you were open. Man, you were the most open you have probably ever been with a person in your life. Probably. Right? You shared your feelings, you shared your dreams, you shared your failures, you shared your hopes for the future. And you could literally, when you were dating, you could literally feel the openness. And to your now spouse, that spelled love in big capital letters to her. The sensitive, caring man was willing to share his deepest feelings for you. And you're just like, you felt so close in those moments. And you were so open to each other. There was nothing you were keeping back. And for a wife, that's exactly what she needs and what she wants. And that's how, partially, guys, how you won her over, by being that way. And to you as a man, you probably never did that before. Maybe you did before with another, we won't talk about the ex-girlfriends, but and it broke your heart, right? So you vowed never to do it again, and then you met her, and you just could, and it was no problem. You were open, and you were discovering and learning about each other. And then you got married. And then what happened? Why did it change? Why does that happen when you get married? Go over to Song of Solomon. Yes, we're going to Song of Solomon. Whoa. Song of Solomon, chapter 5. I find some of the way that, obviously it's a very poetic book, but the way it's written, it's almost cheesy, right? At times you're just like, wow, they are laying it on thick right here. But there's good stuff here. So we're gonna Song of Solomon, chapter 5. I'm just gonna read one verse, and it's about openness. That's what we're gonna look for. So here it says, "I sleep, but my heart waketh. It's just great. It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh, saying, Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled. For my head is filled with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night." So good. But the point is here is the open to me, be open. And then we're talking about opening a door here and letting him in and being close. The symbolism here is opening that door. And for us as men, it's hard for us to do that. It's hard for us to be open and to call your wife my love, my dove, my undefiled. You almost have to talk. Thanks, Valerie. You almost have to give a different accent to talk that way, right? Because it's just. But again, we're supposed to be so close to each other, cleave, right, face to face, stuck together, inseparable, open. And for a man, for us to be that way, man, you've got to let all your guards down. If you're even going to talk to your wife that way, and hopefully she doesn't laugh at you when you say it that way, but if you do it more often, right? And I'm not necessarily talking about the way it is, but the point I'm saying is we need to be open with who we are, with how we feel. As men, that's difficult to do. And that opening of the door symbolizes two people drawing closer and sharing their hearts with one another, right? They're attracted to one another emotionally, physically, Spiritually, they are attracted to one another, and they are completely open to one another. If you're open to each other, you will be as close, going back to the first one, as you've ever been. But if you've got parts of you and parts of your emotions and parts of your feelings closed off, that you're just not going to talk about because it's going to bring up conflict, or closed off because it's going to hurt if you talk about them, and keep things from each other, you will not be as open as Song of Solomon chapter 5 is. You won't have that openness. And when you don't have that wide openness with each other, the closeness just isn't going to be there. You just won't be, because you're keeping things back. You're keeping things away. Now, I'm not going to go this direction, but other than mentioning it, this could be because you've got sin in your life. That there's something in your life that is sin, and you're holding that back from everyone. Right? Not just your wife, but every person in the world. You've got that compartmental part of you, and wives, this could be you too. You've got something in your heart that you've kept from everyone, and you think you're keeping it from God because no other human knows about it. But that's you you're closed. You're keeping part of you closed up because, well, I can't let them know that. I can't let her know that. I can't tell him that because that's my issue. So if you've got something in your life that's sin that you're keeping closed off to everyone else, get that resolved. That has nothing to do with marriage. I mean, it does, and it affects it, but that's just a baseline God thing. Resolve whatever sin you're harboring and you're closed off in that compartment, and get right with God on that. Get right with whoever you need to get right with on that. Because if you've got something there, you're never going to be fully open with your spouse. You just won't, because you're keeping something back somewhere. So that's just a side note. But what happens with openness, that openness, back to when you get married, right? What happens to that openness you had when you were courting, when you were dating, you were looking for the woman of your dreams, and it was an adventure. Once you got married, once you found her, I'll be honest, contentment sets in. You just get content, and you kind of just get lackadaisical about it. You no longer feel the need to share and be open because you got her. You got her, she's yours. And it doesn't mean you don't love her, but just that attitude of I don't have to share everything anymore. She's already mine. I can just kind of be. That sets in. That complacency sets in. And your wife, if you're not careful, your wife will view that as unloving and uncaring. You'd be like, well, I already, I've committed. She knows I love her. I've committed. We're married. We live together. We got these kids. We got a family. We got a house. Obviously, I love her. But if you're just content to be and you're not sharing anymore, you're not making every part of you accessible to her, you're closed off somewhere, she's going to see that as uncaring and unloving. Now, to try to give the flip side just a little bit, and we'll talk about this. I think it's the R in chairs. What did you say R was? Roses, not roses. But when we get to the R in chairs, we'll find for men, sometimes men prefer shoulder-to-shoulder relationships. Now, if you understand what that means, that just means I think I talked about this before. If two men go hunting, they can sit in a duck blind or a deer stand for 8 hours, not say but 2 words, and have the best day ever. Come home and be like, man, that was just the best. Me and so-and-so just hung out all day, did hunting, whether you got anything or not. And your wife will be like, what'd you talk about? Nothing really. But it was the best day. It was just awesome, and you bond. Men can just be together, not have to have conversations, but be together and strengthen a relationship. So just like we talked about how women, your husband's not your girlfriend, and you can't sit down in a coffee shop necessarily and expect the same thing that you do with your girlfriend. Men are the same way. And men, you can't expect your wife to be your shoulder-to-shoulder hunting buddy. Now, she could be, and maybe she loves that and she'll do that for you, or she's that way. But you can't just sit on the couch with her for 4 hours at night, not say a word, and her be like, man, I feel so close to you right now. Because that's not going to happen, right? You and your friend could do that. You and your buddy could sit and watch a football game for 3.5 hours and not say anything but yelling at the TV, and you guys would have a good time, and you would bond. Your wife is not that way. She needs you to talk to her. She needs you to be open to her. And while part of you is fine with that shoulder-to-shoulder relationship, and we'll talk about that for the wives when we get there, she's not like that. And again, the command is for you to love right? Your wife. Not expect her to be your buddy. Not expect her to be your bro, right? She's your wife. She needs you to be open. And that's hard for us to do as men because naturally we don't want to be open. We want to kind of keep things to ourselves. But being open is something that'll energize her. Again, going to the energizing cycle. While you were dating, being open, man, that was energizing to her. Like I said, that spelled love in big capital letters to her. How open and sensitive you were. I'm not asking you to be a girly man and be in touch with your feelings like that, but I am asking you to be open with your wife. And I think that you owe her that. That's something that she interprets as love. You being open is loving her. And that may not seem that way to you. It may not feel that way to you, but to her, you being open says you love her, says you care about her. When a husband is closed and quiet, doesn't talk much, it will likely eventually be misinterpreted as unloving. Now, if you have a mature wife and one that wants to respect you, she'll probably give you your space. She'll probably understand, he needs his space, and that is also true. He needs some time. He doesn't want to talk deep emotionally all the time, and she'll give you that. But if it happens over and over and there's never closeness, then she's eventually going to start to go, okay, well, what's going on here? Something's going on that he's not talking about, right? That'll cause the wife to probably at that point move closer. So if it goes on for too long, the husband just closed off and doesn't want to talk much, she intuitively, you as a wife is going to go, something's not right here. Something's wrong. He's too quiet. There's something he's not talking. He's mad at me. He's mad at me for something. He won't talk to me about it. What is it? And for her, what she'll do is she'll start going in closer. She'll want to move in. And so what men will say, the words they'll use will be like, she'll start to pry. And she'll start to find out and try to get in there and pry open what's going on inside because she wants to be close. She wants that openness and she's not getting it. So all right, let's fix this. She wants to fix it. She wants to get there. So she'll want to pry. She'll want to pry open his heart to find out what's going there. And if you want to stay in the energizing cycle, you need to see that when she starts to pry, what she's trying to do. You're probably not coming across as loving, even though you may not even understand it or doing it on purpose. But to her, you might not be coming across as loving, and so she's trying to move in closer. And instead of going, get out of here, why are you being so controlling? Why are you trying to get up in my business? And push her away, understand what she's doing, and stay on the energizing cycle and willingly open up. Because a lot of times, at least Lisa's not here today, Carter's sick, but there have been numerous times in our relationship where she'll be like, something's wrong with you. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. But then if we talk, finds out something is bothering me. That maybe I didn't even really consider something bothering me, but it's affecting our relationship. And she can see that. And I'm coming across as unloving because I'm just closed down. Something's bothering me somewhere else. Maybe it has nothing to do with her. Nothing to do with our relationship. But something has caused me to close down. And it's been long enough that she's like, something's going on. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. Maybe I don't want to talk about it and I know it. So I pretend and say I'm fine, hoping that will end the conversation. But it never does. And so as she continues to try to probe and prod and find out what's going on, a smart husband that wants to be energizing will open up. And you'll talk about what is bothering you, even though you don't want to, right? When you have things like that you put away, you don't want to talk about them on purpose. They're compartmentalized intentionally. But if you want your relationship to be close, open up. She's there for you. She's your helpmeet. Who else are you going to tell things to? Who else are you going to talk about the stuff that's bothering you down inside? God, yes. Go to God first. Always go to God. But on this earth, you're human. That's most close to you is your wife. Open up. Let her help you. Let her support you. Let her hope. Wives, when he does that, respect that. And treat him that way. If he opens up to you if something bothers you, don't dismiss it. Don't be like, is that it? Or why are you worried about that? Or that's silly. Don't demean him. If he opens up, don't demean him. Encourage that. Support him. Give him the respect because he's coming to you. He's trying to give you the love by being open. Then you need to, again, you want to stay in that energizing cycle, wives? Respect him. Respond in a way that will encourage him to love you more. And you can see, again, now in that situation, you can see how it's a hand-in-hand thing. It's a symbiotic relationship. If he comes to you open, you've got to encourage that. You've got to respect him and not demean the things that might be bothering him. Love him for that. So, remember, men, she's not trying to pry or be controlling. You're not being interrogated. She just wants to connect with you. And if you want to be on the energizing cycle, men, when that starts to happen, you're immediately going to feel like you're being interrogated. Remember, she's trying to connect with you. She needs you to be open. Now, the man that refuses either can't be open or won't be open, especially with wives that are more verbal, that want that openness. A lot of times they won't or can't do it for fear of being disrespected or feeling inadequate, and that's kind of what I just touched on a little bit. They'll avoid discussions, right? We'll put that in quotes. They'll avoid discussions because they feel they're being fixed, right? Men will have that attitude is every time I open up and talk about something, my wife has to fix it. It wants to make me better because I'm not good enough, or fix me, make this better in the way she wants it to be. And that's how a husband could view it. When that happens, now as husbands, you're going in a direction where Colossians 3:19 says, husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them. If you're not careful, if you continue to view her prying and interrogations as such and not her crying out for your love, you'll stay on the crazy cycle, and then you'll start to get bitter. You'll start to get mad that she's always trying to control you, always trying to find out what you're doing, always trying to fix you. And as a man, you'll compartmentalize it. You'll suppress it. You'll put it down. You would never admit it, especially this man that's not talking about stuff. You'd never admit that that's what's happening. But you're suppressing it, and just below that surface, there's anger. And now you're starting to get angry. And it'll start to show. It'll start to affect your relationship. It definitely already is affecting your openness. You're not open at all. But you won't, again, going back to not being disrespectful and being honorable, you won't say it out loud to your wife. You won't tell her what you feel like she's doing. And so you'll suppress. And the anger will start to build. And you'll be in violation of Colossians 3:19. You'll start to become bitter against her. And when you start to become bitter against your wife and how she's treating you, how she's interrogating you, how she's always trying to fix you, well then there's no way you can love her. Not the way she needs to be. You'll still be committed to her. You'll still love her, but you won't be showing love. You will not be motivating her with your love. You will be treating her in a way that she reacts disrespectfully. So we have to be very careful as husbands that when we remain closed off about things, that can very quickly turn to bitterness, because your wife is going to want to know what's going on. She's going to sense it, and she's going to keep pushing on trying to find out what's wrong. Not because she's trying to get you, but because she loves you. Because she wants to get close to you. She wants to be open with you. And she's not okay with having something in the relationship that you just don't talk about. It needs to be out for her. And if you continue to back up and close down and become like an armadillo and just roll up in a ball and just got a tight shell around you, she's going to keep pounding that at that wall until it comes down and you eventually open up and get on the energizing cycle, or it explodes. And then when it explodes, now you've got more problems to handle, more things to deal with. Okay? So understand, your wife wants to get close to you. A bitter husband will talk harshly. He'll be resentful. He'll be cynical. A bitter husband has no hope for openness with his wife. If you become bitter at how your wife, you interpret or decode her messages, the bitterness, you will have no hope of being open with her, which means you will struggle to give her the love that she needs. So if you're struggling with that, or if you come across times where that's a struggle, I know I have. There have been times that we've gotten into arguments and I just really felt like she was just trying to, I can say that she's not here, but she never was doing this. But to me, I felt like she was just trying to control everything I did, wanted to fix everything because everything I was doing was wrong. Every time I treated her way, it was not the right way, being very transparent with you. And I started to get angry about it. And you did. Bitterness could creep up. Now, who do you think you are? How dare you? I'm doing all these things. Then you list off all your good qualities that you see and that she obviously doesn't see, right? And you start to feel disrespected. And if you don't take care of that bitterness, you will forever be on the crazy cycle. And it just will not be fun. I mean, it's uncomfortable just to talk about out loud. Imagine living that way all the time. So how do you, as a husband, if you're starting to feel that way, how do you get that taken care of? How do you get rid of that? Romans 8:9 says, "But ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you." Guys, when you're bitter, when you have that bitterness feeling, that's the flesh. That's our sin nature. That's you not being in tune with Holy Spirit. If you've got that bitterness in you, you've got to get on your face before God, and you've got to ask the Holy Spirit to control your spirit, because your spirit is becoming bitter against the one that loves you more than anything else. Doesn't matter what she's done. Doesn't matter if your feelings are justified. They aren't. You need to get right and get to loving her regardless of how she treats you. And usually the bitter husband will feel disrespected, and he thinks that that's the start of it, is she's being disrespectful to me, and that's what's causing me to feel this way. But you're not giving the love that you need, and there's a crazy cycle. So you start loving the way you need to love, and the way to get rid of that bitterness is to get with the Holy Spirit and ask him to control your spirit, to get rid of that bitterness. Because you're not just going to flip a switch and be fine. You've got to let the Holy Spirit wash over you and take that bitterness away and love your wife the way you're commanded to love her. Because if you're closed off, if you're angry, if you're bitter, you are disobeying that command, and you're also now disobeying the command in Colossians. You're stacking up disobedience over and over again as a husband. And your relationship will not be what it needs to be and what it should be. So, take care of that bitterness if that's there. So, finally, as I kind of finish up here, so how do we as husbands now deal with this sensitive creature that we have living with us, right? A lot of times men will be like, she's just so sensitive. If I'm not careful and don't share everything, she's going to feel offended and feel like I don't love her. How could I ever live up to that standard of open with everything all the time and loving her the way she needs to be? She's so sensitive. First, her sensitivity that we say, and kind of a her sensitivity is what keeps her up all night long when the kids are sick, and keeps them right there holding their hand and holding that puke bucket and whatever needs to be done. That's what keeps the wife up doing that. That's what keeps the wife, her sensitivity is what has her take care of you when we're sick and when we get sick and it's just we're about to die. Right? Like you're dead. 24 hours I'll probably be gone if I'm just so sick right now. Woe is me. The sensitivity is what has her take care of you when you're sick like that. The sensitivity is the way God made her to be. So what will you do with her sensitivity? What will you do as a husband with her need for you to be open? Will you continue to close yourself off? Will you continue to disregard that as a need that she has and just say, she's just being overly sensitive? Or will you move towards her and connect and work on yourself on being more open than you are? Those are the two choices, right? You can continue to be closed off, say she's just being overly sensitive, get over it, or you can understand what she's calling out for and try to fulfill that and try to show her love the way she needs to be. So you can either choose to be on the crazy cycle or choose to be on the energizing cycle. But those are your only two choices. So if you choose to be closed and say it's blown up bigger than it needs to be, realize you've chosen to stay in the crazy cycle. So hopefully you would say, well, I don't want that. I want to choose to be on the energizing cycle. So work on yourself. Work on being open. Work on not keeping things from your spouse. Work on living in a way and making sure your things on your phone and your computer and the stuff you watch on TV and the movies and Netflix, make sure your life is in a point where you can share everything with her. That you don't have to keep things away that you don't want her to know about. If you're watching a movie or a show that she would never approve of, but you really like it, so I want to watch it without her knowing, you're starting to compartmentalize things and keep things from her. It may not be your relationship specifically. It's just a TV show she doesn't like, but I do. But you're starting to keep things closed off from her. If you're not willing to talk to her about it and be open with it, you're starting to compartmentalize. And eventually that will cause problems in the marriage. And you'll just keep throwing things in that room that you don't want her to know about. Right? So live in a way that you can be completely open with each other. And then work on being open. Work on intentionally talking about your feelings out loud to your spouse. Okay, she feels you're open when you share your feelings, when you talk about your day. Not just, yeah, work was great. Okay, there's nothing there. What happened at work? Who'd you talk to? What'd you talk about? I don't know. I don't remember. She feels loved when you remember, when you share your day, when you talk about it. When you had something bad happen, tell her. When you had something good happen, tell her. When you had a conversation with somebody, tell her. It seems inconsequential. It seems silly. Why would you want to know? I talked about Bob. With Bob. What about Bob? Talked to Bob about fantasy football teams and how we're talking about trading this guy, but he's trying to get too much. You're like, she doesn't care about that. But if you tell her and you're open with her, she'll see, wow, he's just talking to me. Maybe I don't care about the subject matter, but his heart's here. He's open. He's talking. And wives, when he does that, when he talks about things he cares about, we talked about the fantasy football team or whatever, the work thing that he does that you have no clue what it means, right? But when he talks and he's open about it, again, don't poo-poo it. Don't disregard it. Be like, well, tell me something that's actually important. Well, that seems dumb. Give respect for what he's talking to you about. Keep the cycle going in a good way. She feels you're open when you ask about her feelings and her opinions. You ever ask her about her opinion on things? When you've already even have your mind already made up. But it's okay to ask her opinion. Ask her about her feelings. She feels you are open when you make eye contact when you talk. Your body language will show if you're open or not. If you're sitting on the couch and she's telling you something like, and she's over here talking and you're focused on the news or the baseball game or whatever, like, oh, really? Oh, okay, really? That's not open. Eye contact, full attention. Mute the TV, better turn it off. Turn towards her. Full attention, body language, eye contact. Your wife feels you're open when you pray with her. You pray together? Do you take time to pray with your wife on purpose? Don't let her come to you and say, let's pray. It's uncomfortable sometimes to pray, even with your spouse. Praying is something you do alone. But your wife will feel you are open if you pray with her. And not just at the altar when, she's got to do something different. Just kidding. Just making sure everyone's awake still. Pray with her at home. Just take a time. If you both wake up at the same time, pray for 5 minutes. You lay in bed on your backs and pray. Hold hands. Pray together. You want to make a wife feel like you're really open and really love her? Pray with her like that. Discuss financial concerns, big life changes, plans for your future. If you include her in your thought process on that, she'll feel like you're open. She'll feel like you love her. So I'm wrapping it up here. Be open, guys. Work on being open. She interprets that as love. You want her to be loved. You want to show her love. You want to be close like she does. Love her. Be open. Talk. All right, we'll pray.